Physical versus digital has always been a major topic of discussion, especially in this day and age where, there's no denying that the trend is definitely transitioning more towards digital, but that doesn't mean that physical medium, physical discs or cartridges, any of that stuff is going away. There are always going to be people who will want to have the physical version of a game because they'll feel more secure about the preservation of that game. With digital titles, if a service ends, a platform shuts down or whatever, it's entirely possible that that digital purchase will no longer be accessible, whereas if you have the physical disc or cartridge and all that data is in there, then you can just, insert the disc or cartridge and, play the game without having to worry about losing it forever. Not to mention that folks with slow internet speeds or low internet data caps don't have to deal with any of that because they can just install the game directly from the disk. Or at the very least, a significant portion of it. There might be updates here and there, but that's better than having to install the entirety of the game plus the updates from the internet. There are conveniences to digital purchases. You can access a variety of games quicker. You don't have to, switch discs or cartridges in and out and whatnot. But ultimately, as long as the choice is there, people can go with whatever version they prefer. But one game isn't really giving you that choice, but rather only giving the illusion of choice, and that's Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. This tweet has recently been making the rounds from Twitter user Does It Play. It reads right here, 70 megabytes ... pointing to information about Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. Zooming into the screenshot, you'll see that this specific file is 72.3 megabytes in size, and you might be wondering, what exactly is this? Well, apparently, this is the data that's included in the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 disc that you get with a physical edition. And obviously, there's no way that a major AAA game like Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 would be 70 megabytes in size, especially when Call of Duty games tend to be in the hundreds of gigabytes due to just how poorly they're, compressed or whatever you want to call it. The file sizes of Call of Duty titles tend to be pretty ridiculous. So what's going on here? Well, this Eurogamer article explains it all. The headline reads, Modern Warfare 2's disk has a whopping 70 megabytes of data with a 150 gigabyte download. Now, I don't know what exactly the 72 megabytes of data contained in the Modern Warfare 2 disk is. I can only assume it's basically an installer of sorts that begins the download of the game proper, which is following a pre-release update roughly 150 gigabytes in size. And this is, by the way, without including Warzone 2.0, which will launch down the line. That's going to further balloon the overall size of this whole package. But the point being that the data that's needed to install Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 is not in fact in the disc. What that means is that the Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 physical edition is really no physical edition at all. It is just the digital version of the game that's just more inconvenient with extra steps. You have to insert the disc and you have to download the game. You can't install it directly from the disc. That's not what a physical edition is. This is just a digital edition that's been disguised with an extra piece of plastic. It's straight up just a scam, if you ask me. It gives you none of the benefits of a proper physical edition, which is why Modern Warfare 2's dummy discs, as they're labeled here, appropriately I think, have come under severe criticism, as it places the burden on the players to obtain the rest of the game through the internet, which can be a slow and expensive process for those with low internet speeds and data caps. Data cap being a major thing. That's another thing. Depending on where you live, your internet situation might be less than ideal, and even if you do have decent speeds, internet data caps are still a major part of how these internet service providers do business. I myself, where I live, have a data cap through AT&T. They limit me at 1 terabyte per month. And downloading Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, 150 gigabytes, that is roughly 1/7 of my total allotted internet usage that I'm allowed for a month before they start charging me more for exceeding my data cap. And so for reasons like these and beyond, plenty of people might primarily opt for a physical copy of a game in order to mitigate some of the potential drawbacks and risks of getting the digital edition of a game. And Eurogamer highlights situations in Europe that further necessitate the need for physical editions, proper physical editions for some households. With the cost of living crisis afflicting much of Europe, the necessity to keep a console at idle just to download data can become a costly affair. There's also the adverse environmental impact because this dummy physical edition has the drawbacks of both physical and digital editions. On the digital edition distribution front, you have to keep your console on, and that's millions of consoles left on for a download. And then on the physical side of things, you're making all of these discs that's essentially waste, production of millions of discs with no functional use without an internet connection. It would have made no difference for them to not release a physical edition of Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 if this is the route that they were going to take, with the disc just serving as an installer to download the game rather than the physical medium housing the entirety of the game, or at least, the 1.0 version of the game. They might as well not have released a physical edition at all, and it would have been less wasteful, and people would have been directed to the digital edition, which is more convenient than this dummy version of a physical edition. And when it comes to the main purpose for physical edition purchases, preserving your game so that if a platform goes down, you can still take a game that you bought and play it on a console that may be outdated. That's one area where this dummy physical edition is also entirely useless, as it prevents players from keeping a hard copy of the single-player campaign long after Sony and Microsoft have shut down their servers. Now, Eurogamer made it a point to highlight that this has been an emerging strategy by Activision to move away from physical releases. The publisher is already incentivizing digital pre-orders to gain early access to the campaign and to purchase the special Vault edition. Part of me thinks that they released a dummy physical edition on purpose to incentivize people to just go fully digital, to try to drive the trend of physical versus digital towards digital more, because they would prefer that everything went digital because it's just easier to distribute games that way. It's easier to make money that way because it's less costly. There isn't additional costs involved in, publishing physical copies of games and getting them manufactured, so on and so forth. But there will always be people, I think, who will want to buy the physical version of a game, and those people are quite upset at being surprised by the physical edition that didn't warn that it would just contain an installer rather than, the full game inside the disc. Which is why, going back to the Does It Play Twitter thread, you'll find Does It Play itself saying that this is gross, some people saying it should be illegal to sell a software disc with less than 80% of the actual software on the disc, so on and so forth. Plenty of people are calling foul and baffled that Activision would go this far to try to normalize digital purchases. Hundreds of thousands of pounds of plastic shipped all over the world for nothing, so on and so forth. This is generally what the feedback looks like among the gaming community. And this isn't the first time that Activision has faced criticism for the way they've dealt with physical releases. Recall that the Spyro Reignited trilogy got some backlash because people found out that the physical edition of this trilogy only includes the first game in the disc, while the second and third game had to be downloaded. As PlayStation Lifestyle put it here, the disc will only include Spyro the Dragon, Spyro 2 Ripto's Rage, and Spyro Year of the Dragon will need to be downloaded. Activision's response to backlash was, a whole lot of nothing. As with most games today, downloading an update after purchase is quite common, except Spyro 2 and 3 are not just updates, they're literally entire games I have to download. And with Modern Warfare 2, it's infinitely worse because there's no game whatsoever in that game's disc. Now, another title that Activision published is Crash Bandicoot Insane Trilogy, which contained all three games in the disc, and also in later releases of the physical edition of the game included all of the updates and DLC levels. These are now included on the disc with more current pressings of the game. But this was a game that was released before the Spyro trilogy. As the years go by, Activision is pushing the boundaries of making physical editions more and more useless, and with Modern Warfare 2, it is literally completely useless. It's not just partially useless, it straight up has no use whatsoever other than being an extra level of inconvenience compared to the digital version, because it's just a digital version that's encased in a disc, and that requires, I guess, the disc as a key to be able to verify your purchase. And we have already seen plenty of prominent pundits speaking out against this, namely Lance McDonald, who is a well-known modder. He came out and said, people keep reacting to this with stupid takes like, all game discs these days are just a license key with mandatory downloads. Games haven't shipped on discs for years, lol. Get with the times, which isn't true at all. 99.999% of all retail games are perfectly playable from disc in 2022. Sure, it might not be the latest version until you connect to the internet and download an update, but some version of the complete game is in the disc. Lance McDonald continues, stop pretending this is normal. It's not normal and should never become normal. Tethering a physical disc to a digital service that forces you into firmware updates, online ecosystems, and DRM updates just to play a single-player game is not a standard now and should never be, and makes the whole point of physical edition utterly moot. Lance McDonald then brings up PC gaming and why that's different from console gaming. PC gaming is 100% digital because it's an open platform platform, and we can run code however we like. We can buy a digital game and have full ownership and control over how that game is executed and played in the future. Stop acting like what's normal on PC is applicable to consoles, which are closed ecosystems. It's harder to preserve games because you have to jailbreak your console essentially to make it open. Consoles are a lot more restrictive about your autonomy over your digital files, unlike PCs. Somebody brought up Cyberpunk and how the disc version is essentially a broken version of the game, which is true, but Lance McDonald points out that Cyberpunk is not a normal situation. The company had to literally petition PlayStation to let them put that screwed up build of the game on the disc by promising the day one patch would fix all the issues. When they broke that promise, Sony removed the game from sale due to certification fail. So yes, Cyberpunk did happen, but that is not the standard and status quo for physical edition releases. And last but not least, Lance McDonald talks about day one patches. There's a huge difference between day one patch makes the game 1,000 times or 10,000 times better, and the game isn't even on the disc at all. Here's one more take from Twitter that I think is worth highlighting and that I agree with. This is an utter waste of resources. Either load the disc and make the day one patch the correct size, or make it a digital download. These discs will be useless if and when Activision decide to discontinue support for the game. I certainly hope that this isn't a trend that all publishers will begin to follow. First of all, I think we need to have a mix between physical and digital. Even if we are trending more towards digital these days, you need to give people who would purchase physical because of those advantages, the benefits of game preservation and not having to download everything. Allow those people to go with that option if they want. And secondly, if a company wants to lean purely towards digital, don't release a physical edition without warning people that it's basically just a digital edition with extra steps. This is both a disrespect to the value of the physical disc version of a game and also a disrespect to customers who straight up were deceived. A lot of people who bought the physical edition did not expect that all they'd find in the disc is a 72 megabyte installer that ultimately ends up emulating a digital version that still requires a download, that still requires internet access, that will take up a whole bunch of your data, and if your internet is slow, it'll take you a while to be able to play the game, and you're not going to be able to preserve that game. Once this game is gone, it's going to be gone forever, and you having the physical disc won't matter at all because of the fact that the disc is pretty much as good as empty. So yeah, just an awful physical edition that I felt was worth warning you all about, especially those who are planning to get this game, sometime after launch, and were thinking of getting the physical edition. Don't, because it's no good. It gives you nothing that the digital edition doesn't. It gives you the drawbacks of the physical edition without the benefits. It frickin' sucks. And shame on Activision for approving this crap. And if this starts to become a trend, I'll be calling that shit out. Either go full digital, which you shouldn't in the first place because physical medium is important, or, if you do release a physical disc version, do it right. Give people what they want from their physical purchases. Or at the very least, that's one man's take on Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2's dummy physical edition. Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on all of this, whether you share my sentiments on how in poor taste this all is, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.